After 6 months of watching classic films and some new ones that skip the theater entirely, I am finally able to go back to my second home, which is the theater. And I'm really looking forward to this. I've been wanting to get to the theater ever since they closed, because that's where I love to go and love to watch movies. And I'm interested to see what safety procedures they put into place, see how this feels wearing for a whole film. And yeah, I'm heading out to see a quote-unquote Marvel film because I'm going to see the New Mutants, which I've been excited for. And it's only 3 years delayed, so this will definitely be interesting. And yes, so here we go. It was great getting to see a movie on the big screen again. It just felt so right, and I've been craving it. The chance to see a new movie in theaters on the big screen with other folks in the theater, even though this pandemic has not changed moviegoers at all. There were people with their phones on at the beginning, phones on right at the end. There were people not following the rules, had their masks off the entire time, not just when they were drinking or eating something like I did. And another two guys completely ignored the fact that there was a sign saying every other row was closed off. So people still are idiots and still aren't great when it comes to going to movies. But that being said, it was nice being out with people and seeing a movie. As for how the theater was, I thought they did a really good job. There was plenty of hand sanitizer around. There were clearly marked where you were supposed to be and not supposed to be. There was a guy I saw who was like watching you, making sure you were doing the right thing. But that was also unnerving, because I'm like, am I doing something wrong? You know, he was just standing there watching me. It felt like there was hardly anybody in the theater, even though there were some. And it just felt a lot quieter than what we'd become accustomed to. Now, yes, obviously people aren't going to be going out as much with this pandemic, but that too just didn't quite feel right. But I really think they're handling things well. I'm looking forward to going to another movie. Hopefully I'll be seeing Tenet in a couple days. And I think even if this had been a terrible movie, just the fact that I got to go to a theater finally and experience a new movie, especially a superhero movie, that just made everything better. And I actually got over the masks. I thought that would be annoying, but once I sat down and started watching and just getting absorbed back into the idea of going to the movies, sitting there with my soda, it just disappeared. Now, we'll see how it handles or how I feel about it after Tenet. But yeah, the movie theaters feel fine. I highly recommend that if you want to go see a movie, I don't see any problem with it. As long as you follow the rules, you're not a jerk, and you wear your mask. It doesn't really seem to be any problems with it. As for how I felt about the movie, well, give me a little bit to think about it, and I'll be right back. I love comics and superheroes. So the fact that the first movie I got to see after theaters were closed for so long was in fact New Mutants, a comic book superhero movie, was fantastic. Now, let me start off by saying I don't know a lot about the New Mutants. I know the characters and I know their powers with a little bit of their backstory because of other X-Men stories, other Marvel comic stories. But this specific arc, these specific situations, the deep dives for these characters, I'm not really familiar with it. That being said, what did I think of this movie? Well, let's start with the pros. Everything the director, producers, writers said about this movie, I loved. The fact that it's a horror movie. And while it's not the you're shaking and you need to turn away type of horror movie, there's still a horror thriller element to it. And it's great. It's different from other superhero movies we've seen. Now, we've seen superhero movies with demons and, the underworld. But this is more of that horror feel to it, that genre. You feel at times trapped within this secluded area, just like the characters. And I love that it's also a psychological thriller, which, without getting into too much detail, just the way that you learn about these characters and even the way you learn about their past. It's not a straightforward history lesson like a lot of origin movies. So I love how they tell that story. But of course, you can't have a superhero movie without superpowers and super cool looks. And this movie has it. I love how all their powers work, whether it's Wolfsbane transforming into a wolf, or Sunspot, or Cannonball whizzing from here to there. But my favorite is Ileana, aka Magic. Now, while she might not be the best character or the one you're going to love in the movie, just the fact that her arm, when it armors up and you see her sword come out, it looks fantastic. It looks great. I got so excited every time that came on screen. Limbo and the portals to Limbo that she creates looks great. They did a really good job with these visuals. I also loved the final fight of this movie. I thought it was so well done. We got to see everybody with their full potential, their full powers out there. Throughout the beginning of the movie, we got little spurts here and there, little glimpses of things. But finally getting to see everybody just unleash their full power, their full potential, was fantastic. It looked great, and I loved it. I also liked the relationship that they developed between Rain and Danny. Now, while part of it, I was like, do you really need that in there? I have nothing against it. And I liked how it felt natural. These two just felt like they belonged together as friends. Like their past experiences somehow would have drawn them together. I also thought the length and the flow of this movie worked. Maybe at times you felt like there could have been something else in there, or I would have liked to see a little bit more of this. But it never felt like it just stopped and you got taken out of the movie for some reason. No, you were always absorbed into the film. And it was a good length. And I did think this was a good origin movie. I liked the way they told the story, and it was different. And I liked, like I mentioned before, how each character, you got their personal origin story in a different way. It wasn't just, okay, we're all going to sit around. So tell us, Rain, how did you get your powers? Well, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, Ileana, how did you get your powers? Well, blah, 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 blah. No, it wasn't like that. It was sprinkled throughout the movie, and it worked, and I loved it. Now we come to the middle ground. And these are things that certain aspects of it work, others don't. Maybe there's things that you like, but aren't quite what people in general are going to like. But they're things you accept because they just work for you on this level. First, let's start with Lockheed the Dragon. At the very beginning, when we first see Lockheed, I'm like, oh no. No, this does not work. I am not happy with how Lockheed is being represented here. But then as the movie moves along and starts to progress, I'm like, oh, are they going to do this with that? Okay, that's interesting. And then when we finally get to see Lockheed in his glory, I'm like, okay, why couldn't that have been more here? And I really liked how he ended up. And thinking about it, the character, the way they represent him in this movie, it works for this story. If you've never read a comic book, you're not going to know that something is not right with Lockheed. You're just going to see it in the movie, and I think overall it'll make sense. The other thing about this movie that I didn't mind was the fact that these characters, at least at the start, seemed very cookie cutter. You could tell as soon as you started meeting characters, oh, well, this is that type of person, and this is that type of person, and this is that type of person. Now, for a lot of people, I'm sure that they're going to notice that and maybe not be too thrilled about it. But for me, I really didn't care. I was enjoying the characters overall. I was enjoying the visuals and the story. So to me, it was a much more minor aspect. Now, maybe that was because it was the first movie I'd seen in theaters in 6 months, and they could have done almost anything and I'd been happy with it. But I feel like the movie as a whole just made that aspect of it not really matter as much to me. Finally, what was it about this film that I didn't care for? Well, the main thing was the ending felt anticlimactic to me. Now, the fight itself, I really had a good time with. And I understand why they did certain things at the end of this film, because overall it worked. But it didn't give me that huge superhero X-Men finale that I was really wanting. The actual end of the film, that was good. But the climactic part of the battle just did not work for me, especially with what I was expecting. And that also comes out of the fact that I felt like these characters never really became a cohesive unit. I didn't expect that at the very beginning of the movie, but I expected by the end that we'd see them all work together like the X-Men, like the Avengers. You know, that we'd see them grow and become a single unified unit. And we really don't get that. We got little aspects of it with certain characters working together. But we never got, like I said, the new mutants, the team. I did not see that. Overall, I'd say that X-Men fans, horror film fans, they're probably going to enjoy this movie. X-Men fans are definitely going to nitpick a lot more about backstory or characters' powers, the way they look. But I think overall they'll enjoy it. The typical moviegoer who's just out to see a movie, I think it'll give or take. Some will enjoy it, and some will just be like, what is this? But for me, I had a fun time with it. I enjoyed myself. It felt different from other X-Men films. I got what I wanted. The superpowers, the ways they looked. I got a good story, in my opinion. But I'm just disappointed that we're not going to get to see these actors and actresses again in these roles. Because this movie felt like a great jumping off point. Could it have done more? Yes, because it's definitely not the best X-Men film, but it's also not the worst one. Same as far as superhero films go. It's not the best, it's not the worst. But I just think that this was a really good way to start off introducing these characters to non-fans or to fans alike. And I feel like this movie would have been a great start point for a trilogy that I'm sure they were coming up with. Maybe if we'd gotten it sooner, we could have gotten that. Maybe they would have done something that it would work in with the rest of the MCU. Who knows? But if this is all we're going to get, I can't say I'm totally disappointed. I enjoyed myself. And I think regardless of the times we were living in, I'd like to think that overall, I would have enjoyed it nonetheless. So, what type of ranking do I give this movie? Well, after thinking about it, I'm going to give this movie a civilian. It's not a great movie. It's not the terrible movie. But it's an enjoyable time at the theater, in my opinion. But what about you? Have you seen this movie yet? Are you going to see this movie? What are your expectations? Do you know more about the New Mutants than I do? Comment down below and let me know, because I'm always curious to learn about things when it comes to comics I don't know. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos. Coming up very soon, we're going to have a review of Tenet. We'll have a review of Phineas and Ferb. And since this is my first review video, I'll be putting out another one so you guys will have an idea of how I'm going to do a rating system for these movies. But until we meet again, enjoy what you love, read what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I'll see you next time.